A small Cambridge inn called the White Horse. The Reformation came.
Restless is raw, unscripted, reformed radio. Pastor Michael, it is good vibes only this summer here at Restless. How are you doing?
Good vibes. I've got good vibes. I've been sick. I just said this for the patrons when we recorded, but I'll say it for everybody else. I'm so sorry. I will be coughing at times and sniffling at times, and I will try to hide it, but it is inevitable. But I've got good vibes. The sun is out here after absolute torrential downpour.
Oh man,
yesterday.
That was crazy.
It was. Our driveway is pretty gone. We have a gravel driveway, and it's pretty gone. And I was gone while it happened, and I drove back home, and I was like, oh, wow, it was like really, really bad rain.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I was out on the interstate yesterday, which was not where to be during that pretty crazy storm. But God is good. I
have a memory, by the way, to make this intro way too long.
Perfect.
Driving through Eau Claire when I was in middle school.
Which is where I live, for those who don't know.
Which is where Matt lives. So driving through where Matt lives on the interstate in between my 8th grade and freshman year of high school. And we had gone on a trip to Canada, and it was me, my dad, and my twin brother. And we're driving back through Eau Claire back to our house, and we hit this torrential downpour where you could barely drive at all. Like, most people were pretty much stopped. It was so, like, it was the most rain I've ever seen, just absolute downpour. We happened to be behind a semi that was going very, very slow, but he kept moving, and so we were able to keep going. And then all of a sudden, it just stopped.
Interesting.
And the sun is out. It was like a sudden, like almost like there was a wall of rain. And then we look to our right, and there's a tornado.
Sure. that is
it was wild.
Weather.
It was like a mile away. It wasn't like right there, but it was, wow, was it fascinating and kind of a little bit scary when you're on the road, and all of a sudden it was a small one, but it was a real tornado. It's the only time I've ever seen a tornado in person.
So we are going to keep Reading Restless this summer, but it is good vibes only summer. So what we are going to be handling this summer is we're going to be handling those things that seem to be making the internet kind of mad, and we're going to be handling it with good vibes only.
Only vibes. Only good vibes.
Only good vibes here. And so whether you're mad about the Reconquista or G3 Ministries or getting a new stated clerk in the PCA or AI videos of Bible characters, whatever it is, and plus more, and many more things, we're here for you. We're here for you this summer because we are going to take every single one of those topics, and you're going to leave going, man, I'm glad.
Good vibes.
Good vibes.
I'm glad. I'm maybe not glad about the thing, but I'm glad.
There's some... These guys found a way to make me glad this summer. And so,
we're having fun, everybody. We're going to have fun.
And so make sure you're ready this summer, whether it's a hop water or your own hard seltzer, to be here for good vibes. Today, Pastor Michael, though, we get to talk about reading children's literature, which is good vibes, by the way.
Yeah.
So can I make one plea about why it's actually worth reading children's literature?
Let's hear it.
I was thinking about this. I don't really remember. I think that I often am. There are things. Here's the one problem I often end up running into in our kind of Reformed circles, and it's certainly the kind of thing that I have been guilty of. And this is why I like Reading Restless. Reading Restless.
Let's hear it.
I like Reading Restless. 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 This is why I like this. This is why this is the best. Let me just justify in my mind why we're doing this.
Shout out to us.
Shout out
To us for
thank
doing
you,
this.
me.
I wanna thank me.
Yeah.
I want to thank myself. Insert the meme.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't give up. Is our circles? We are the reading people. We are the books people. But we tend to have very, very utilitarian purposes and tastes in what we read. Like everything, like has a purpose, or is like, I'm reading this because I need to learn this part of Reformed theology, or like I'm reading all of the latest books from Reformed publishers or these republishings. And I think that it is a very small, it's just a very small view of what is possible, and actually what your soul needs, and actually what will make you a good, even theologian. Yeah. Really.
Right. I mean, the way that, so God has spoken, and he does give us teaching, but he also gives us narrative. The world that he spoke into existence is fundamentally a narrative. It's a story. It's a song. And it's all made from words. And so to engage in just enjoyable stories, that of course we want them to be true.
Yep.
Like we want them to have a basis, like that. We want them to correspond to the words that God is speaking. But it's okay for that to not be then like, well, I have this direct, like, moral reason. I'm reading this to get better at this thing. That's not right. Actually, there's a way to read. This goes back to what we've talked about in the past at times about the idea of leisure as opposed to work and recreation. There is reading can be recreational, meaning it's done in a way to prepare you for work or make you the kind of person that can work better. It can increase your skill, your knowledge, these sorts of things. But also because of the kinds of beings that we're made to be, reading can be good in itself. As you just enjoy the language, as it does point you to those higher things, greater things. I give you an example. So you've talked about reading Till We Have Faces. And I'm in a group that's right now reading Till We Have Faces and going to be discussing it. So I'm rereading it for probably I don't know if it's probably the 5th or 6th time. And how I do this, by the way, one of the ways that I read books, especially if I'm trying to basically read fast, but I don't want to miss anything, is I will go on YouTube, get the audiobook going, and I'll pump it up to 2 times speed on the audiobook, but then I'll follow along in the physical book. Right. So, for instance, Till We Have Faces, if you do that, you can get through it in about 4 hours. Now, it helps that I've read it a lot, right? So it's not like I'm going to be missing a lot because I have read it many times, but it does allow me to also ingest it in a different way. And yesterday, as I was doing this, there were times where I thought, oh, I just love that phrase. There were phrases, or there was, certain paragraphs where I thought this is one of the most like beautiful, like poetic images, or things like that, where I just found myself, I just like it, right? Like I just enjoy this. I have nothing I can do with it, right? Like I'm not going to go now and use this for something. I just like it for what it is. I'm just enjoying it because it's good and true and beautiful. And I think that reading really should be that, even more so than it should be, well, I need to up my game in some way. Although it has the added benefit of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think, and I do think that especially children's literature has the power to do that. This is why things like the Chronicles of Narnia show up in so many sermon illustrations, because it's so great. Let me give you one line like this from the children's literature I was reading over the last month, and maybe we'll talk about the rabbit hole it caused me to go down, because I do think it's fascinating. So this is from the very ending of Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Solid.
I also read Little House on the Prairie, I've never read those. As I mentioned when we were talking about what to read for children's books, I said I'm reading these. My daughter loves them. We'll come back to that. But here's the ending of Little House in the Big Woods that tells you why this is so interesting. And so she says, she's falling asleep, right? She thought to herself, this is now. She was glad that the cozy house and Pa and Ma and the firelight and the music were now. They could not be forgotten, she thought, because now is now, and it could never be a long time ago. That's good.
Beautiful.
That's just interesting, right? Why why this woman writing about her childhood puts things that way is very interesting to me. So Pastor Michael, there are a lot of rabbit holes that I realized open up when you begin to think about the Ingalls family and her childhood. So here's one, right? One of the things that children, I think the reason children are so, let me ask you, why do you think these books are so attractive to children in our, like, still down to now?
Yeah.
What do you think it is?
That's an interesting question. It is it's a beautiful story, like as told from a child's perspective.
Yes.
So that's part of it, right? You see like Ma and Pa from the perspective of a child.
That's definitely one of the accomplishments. An older woman, I think she was in her 60s when she started writing them, is able to write in the voice of a child.
Yeah.
Which is one of the impressive feats she accomplishes. What else do you think?
I mean, we're Americans, and so I wonder how this would play cross-culturally. The pioneer life, the like rugged, we're gonna go out, there's been debates, by the way, like was he bad for doing this?
We're gonna
I don't know,
we're gonna come back to this for a minute. Oh yeah,
but there is something about that, like the Western spirit of like, hey, we're just gonna go. I'm gonna take my wife and kids, and kids feel this, right? I think a lot of kids feel this, like, oh, wouldn't it be like a magical kind of thing to just all of a sudden you're just somewhere, you're trying to make it, you've got these jobs, you're playing while mom and dad are making this little cabin, and it, like, there is something about it that does sound appealing and interesting, much like even today, when people think about survival in some way, right? I've probably brought up the show Alone as a survival show, but there's also other, like, a lot of like survival type things, rugged, we watch a fair amount of the YouTube channel Outdoor Boys in my family, and this like, we're gonna go out and just conquer and do things, but without a lot of the modern conveniences that we have. There's something that stirs the spirit about that I think for many men and women that's the case.
Yes, I do. I think that that the pioneering spirit, I do think the idea of like this a long time ago, like, but it being now, I do think that there is a thing where you're a kid and you're like, this is going to be a long time ago, like that, thinking through that. But I think that the reason it's so compelling in that way is actually the same thing about the YouTube videos you're describing. It's actually a real story. This is a real person.
Yes.
This isn't just, here are some stories about the pioneer days.
Yeah.
This is a woman describing her childhood. And I think that is what makes the, like, children want to know this child that basically lived through these things, I think is one of the things about it that's so compelling. Her writing style is compelling in that it's basically like Ernest Hemingway. It's this like very like direct, concrete, not flowery, like very like there's a chapter like, here's what it was like to skin a deer. Here is the chapter on how to build a chimney. Like, these are the kinds of and like, as I read it, I'm like, my 8-year-old daughter is like glued to a book
Loving
where it's like
it.
building a chimney, building a roof. And it's just, so again, I just think that those things, I find them interesting. And so I just think it's really, obviously in that way, it's compelling writing. The books were released around the time of the Depression in the United States, which I also think is interesting because that means all of the difficulty portrayed in the book was immediately a marketable and relatable experience to the original audience, which probably explains why they took off.
There's something so this is just me looking back and remembering things. Like I remember reading stories like the Boxcar Children.
Yep.
And having this feeling of, wouldn't it be cool to have to live in a boxcar and have to scrounge to find
Figure
what
it
you
out.
need and just figure it out. I remember thinking that as a very young child. My favorite book when I was a boy was Hatchet and My Side of the Mountain, books where it was it's a boy who's just out there and he's got to learn how to make it. He's just got to figure it out. I loved those when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's that sense of excitement at, hey, I just have to really figure something out.
Yeah.
This is why free play for kids is so important, by the way. There's a lot of work coming out about that right now. A lot of, the anxious generation type stuff, but kids literally are made to just go out and just figure stuff out. Go do it, not have everything prepackaged and easy for you, but to have to actually apply themselves to the real world.
Yeah. I think so let's go down 2 rabbit holes. There are many rabbit holes about these books, by the way. Here's the first one, Pastor Michael. Here's your strange conundrum. What section are these books sold as and categorized as? What kind of literature are these categorized as?
That's an interesting question, and I have no idea.
Fiction.
It is. Yeah. I was going to say maybe, historical fiction.
Even though they are a woman's memoirs.
Yeah.
So there are numerous, I've learned, and we're not going to, maybe in a conspiracy corner, we could do the Laura Ingalls Wild conspiracy of people trying to understand what about it is fictionalized. Because they are her memories, but it is it still was originally created and put out as fiction. And so I think that's a very, again, this becomes and of course the people now doing the well, here's what it was really like. Why would we, because we're basically saying her reconstruction has fictional elements. Why would a later person's reconstruction be more accurate than her reconstruction? Right? We're getting to the theory of how you do history, right?
Yep.
What history is like.
Yes.
Because one of the early criticisms is she's 3 or something in what the first book would be. And so there's an entire academic debate over, could a 3-year-old remember things in detail the way she actually claims to and reports them. And interestingly, after a long time of saying no, there is a growing consensus that yes, she probably did. And especially given later in life as a child, her sister goes blind, which I have not read about. So sorry, spoiler alert for anyone. And she spent the rest of her childhood describing things to her sister. And so they literally believe she probably, from a fairly small child, practiced describing everything around her to someone else. And the only points of reference she would have had to explain things, it was like when we were in this house when you could see. So when she was much younger. And so that constant recounting.
Super interesting. Super interesting. And this is, so I had always been told, I don't know if it was, any work in, I think it was maybe a psychology professor who told me at one point, you cannot have memories from that age, right? Or maybe after 3, but up to 3, you basically can't have any memories. But I've also met people who they're No, like I literally do. Here's this memory I have. And usually it's something big, some kind of big change. It
Yep.
could be something traumatic, whatever it is. But it's like I have this distinct memory. And as far as I can tell, it's accurate and true, right?
Yeah.
And so it does make me think there's a lot of possibilities.
So let's talk about Pa. Let's talk about Pa, because we can talk about if he was what he did, if it was good or bad. Obviously, the Ingalls and Wilder relationship to Christianity becomes interesting later. I want to leave that aside. I also want to leave aside the fact that Little House on the Prairie, though she doesn't explain it this way, essentially ends with them having to leave because the federal government is coming, because he settled illegally in an area they still had agreed to let the Indians settle in while there was westward expansion happening. That is why they leave the prairie, right? I explained that to my wife, who's been reading the book. She's like, no, the book doesn't say that. I was like, right, because it's being told from a
Like a kid doesn't know, right? When you're a child, you're not
all
like,
you know
the
is
government's coming. No, they didn't talk about that with you.
They just talked about the soldiers are coming, and Dad said, we're leaving. We're not going to wait for them. We're going to go down, wherever they're headed to next, right? After being there for a year and not being able to harvest, right? Clearly, she's indicating that there was something wrong. So I'm not getting into, we can get into Pa's ethos of, is this actually a good way to live at all? It's a good question. I want to actually look at it from the perspective of a father. These books, because actually one of the reasons people bring up these apparent character problems with Pa is she writes about him with sheer affection.
Yep.
Here's what I want to learn to do. He and she, like, if we were to tell someone create a list of a father today, this man would meet almost none of them. Present in the home. This guy's gone for 2 weeks on hunting trips, this likely constantly working, this man's not giving out vacations, and obviously the one thing kids love is every birthday or Christmas. They're like, it was the greatest Christmas ever. Father got out a piece of peppermint candy and a penny for each of us. And my sister foolishly ate hers in one day. I made it last for 3 weeks, and we shined those pennies, right? And so what it made me reflect on me personally is, so how do you win your children's how do you instill that in your children?
Yeah.
Given that you are given the realities he was dealing with, whether or not they were self-imposed or I think there are obviously problems, but I'll tell you one thing. Here's my one thing that I've thought about this question, because I've thought about it a decent amount. I think one thing is, given the work, the literal survival, literally we die if I don't do this. This man did not pursue things selfishly virtually at all. This man did not have hobbies. He was not putting his children aside to do what he wanted. It was
getting me time. It wasn't like he's getting me time.
He did not have a cell phone he was doom scrolling on. He was not trying to go out with men or even go to a men's Bible study because it was good for him. He the work he did at his home or on his property wasn't a thing the kids were like, I guess Dad likes to build retaining walls or, keep his lawn. It was we're going to eat. We're going to have a chimney, right? And so then everything he did, when it was I watched him help a neighbor, it was in spite of everything, he helped a neighbor.
Yeah.
In spite of everything, at night, unless he was literally too physically tired, he would play a fiddle and I would hear it while I was falling asleep.
Right.
I just wonder if that like just the pure hard work and unselfishness required for that lifestyle is potentially part of
Yeah,
the
like
answer
it
to my
endeared
question.
some. Yeah. So here I'll say two things on that. Number one, it is also like it is a reflection, a poor reflection on us that we live in such a like deconstructionist time where yes, there is like deep problems of fathers and things like that, right? Like we're in a
Yep.
culturally bad place for sure. Also, guarantee Pa acted in ways and did things at times that family, like if they were alive today, they like people would feel justified. If that was your dad, you would feel justified saying, "Oh, he never had time for me. He never did all these
Absolutely.
things."
Oh, this
It's
is the
because
other
we're in
thing.
this deconstructionist time where we do not honor our fathers. That we just like all we do is complain. It's not exactly what I wanted, and we're taught that that's how you're supposed to. That's how you're supposed to do history. That's how you're supposed to do memoir. That's how you're supposed to talk about your parents with your friends.
Yep.
And when you like, that's what you do in counseling is talk about how absolutely horrible my parents are, even if they really like took care of you,
Yep.
right? Not talking about extreme wicked behavior, just like it, even for people that like actually your life was fine because we have such a like that victim mentality. Even people who it's like, I had a really good upbringing. I had parents that really loved me and took care of me. You're supposed to be like, but they didn't do this, or here's this bad thing.
Right.
And so, number one, it's a poor reflection on us, and we
I
should
do.
learn from that for sure.
I agree completely that the other side of this is like you should discipline yourself to speak like she does about her parents.
Speak well. Speak well. Honor your father and mother. Oh, go ahead.
And that even the points where there have been debates over, are there points where she's like kind of tipping her hand to like, this was a little, like things were like kind of on the verge because of what they did. It is meant to be like, it is meant to portray the direness, because I have heard that later in like a book about the winter or whatever, things are like truly dire. They're about to die. Like it is that bad. They are starving to death. Life was getting that hard, but it's still done in a way that is like, my father got to go over to our neighbors who had flapjacks and he finally got a healthy meal. And like, she's not saying that resentful. She's like, but like, it's still done, even in spite of how bad things were. It's still done with what actually would be empathy. Like this was what actual empathy, instead of what we do today. This is what actual empathy would be like. You can write about your parents. And the other question, again, even with her dad, we might go, wow, this guy was crazy. Well, maybe, I don't know, compare him to every other frontier father in that day. And maybe it's like actually compared to every other man she met, he did have it was in his, right, this kind of thing. Yeah. But no, I agree with you. To discipline
so the second thing I'll say then is what this, in part, what that is, what you see in this and what we're talking about is this is a reflection of the pre-industrial household. Not that there wasn't not that it wasn't during industrialization, but living a pioneer lifestyle, you're not living the, hey, I'm going to work in a factory kind of life that you're getting out on the East Coast or something like that. This is a pre-industrial household where even as you said, like, you pointed out, for instance, well, he's working all the time, right? Today, there's all this sense of like, well, the dad who works all the time, like he's a bad guy. My wife and I have thought about this because if you watch movies, especially from the 90s and early 2000s, almost every like kid family movie is all about how dad works too much and the right thing to do would be for him to come home and make his life operate around his wife and children.
For sure.
Which is not a good moral, by the way. But here's the issue. Like, here's where like what you're talking about, fits into this, and what, Pa and him being around and them still, like, though he's working so much, it's all done as an extension of the household, right? As part of the household. So when Pa's putting together a chimney, she's right there.
Yep.
Right. Laura's there. Mary's there. They're around. They're a part of it. He's calling for them. Hey, go and grab this thing for me while I'm up trying to put these planks on the roof. Right? Hey, I dropped this or whatever. Hey, kids, like here's the thing that you do to help with this household. That is actually a more human life than, hey, today we're all going to leave and I'm going to go to my job and my wife's going to go to her job and my kids are going to go to each of their classes, where none of us spend any time together. And then we're going to come home and we're going to watch an episode of a show together. Maybe we'll have some kind of sporting event in between. Maybe if we're a really good family, we'll eat dinner at the table together. But the chances of that are pretty much zero today. And then then we go to bed. Well, what is that? Actually, you're not a family. Like, that sounds crazy, maybe, but you're not a family. You're blood relation. That's it. You're not actually living like a family. And I'm not saying that that's easy to do today. I think it's really hard to do today. I think the societal forces are specifically, against that idea. But that kind of life is the kind of life that will endear children to their parents and parents to their children.
Yeah.
Right. When you're actively engaged in productive enterprise together.
Such a good point, by the way. Such a good point. So this episode is just for you, the Laura heads out there, as I've learned you're called. She literally lived, as I was looking into this, and this is one of my favorite quotes about this woman, the writer. She lived at the edge of industrialization. She lived at the edge. And so it's this one historian said, Laura Ingalls Wilde was an astronaut. She was born in a cottage, a one room, whatever it was, 100 square foot cottage in Pepin, Wisconsin. She died in her 90s at the top of a skyscraper in New York City. Literally, like, the way she ended her life, literally no one could have imagined living when she was born.
Yep.
And so it's just it's a fascinating. It's a fascinating thing. And so again, these are things you can get from children's literature. We are going to have to cut this. We're going to cut this episode. We are about to do a short Patreon after this about my black pill at the public library the other day, because it was
all black pills there, by the way.
It was horrible.
It is all black pills at the public library.
So Pastor Michael, we're pro children's books because some of them are truly worthwhile.
We are pro good children's books.
That's right. And again, if you want to start doing something productive with your children, read books like this to them that are actually nourishing, together. That aren't the same old picture book that's trash that I'm going to want to have a headphone in and listen to something else while I read this to you. And, this is mush to pass these
which
15...
we've all done. Like, we get it.
I'm not.
But no, take the time, actually sit and read together. It is really good.
Yeah, this is one practical way to reclaim it. And so obviously I can only give such a vivid description of what that experience is like, is because obviously I've done that.
I've literally done it.
But so Pastor Michael, this next month, people are invited to read a book about Bitcoin with us. Yes. Pastor Michael, welcome to another book. The comedian John Oliver, who has apparently, I think pretty recently, has decided to fully venture out and seeing what it would be like if you were a comedian who was no longer funny. I love his quote about Bitcoin, Pastor Michael, because it describes why, while everyone, I don't know how many people are reading along with us, how interested they are in these conversations. I'm loving these conversations. Why everyone is very unlikely to take us up on this particular challenge. He says, Bitcoin is everything you don't understand about money combined with everything you don't understand about computers. And I think that's
a pretty good line.
I think it's a pretty good explanation of this. So, Pastor Michael, I don't know what the price of Bitcoin's trading at today. I don't even know. It's something like over $100,000, somewhere in there. But Pastor Michael, I'll give we can give a recommendation or two if someone wants to think about this. But what possibly could it help them? We just said don't read just to be utilitarian, but what possibly could someone be helped if they actually take us up on this book?
So even if you don't know anything about this,
Which most people don't, by the way,
Which-
based on the numbers.
Yep. Based on the numbers is pretty much known. Or if you think that kind of stuff is crazy,
Is a
there's this like
scam.
magic internet money or this scam that people are really into. You just have to look and say, okay, all of the largest money managers in the world, BlackRocks, Fidelities, etc., have come out and said, hey, like you should have something of Bitcoin in any kind of like portfolio. It's obviously like a massive cultural movement, right? It played a significant role in a recent presidential election, so much so that you also have, for instance, the United States government, the largest, most powerful government in the history of the world, has started a strategic Bitcoin reserve. There are bipartisan Bitcoin bills being passed in many state houses, as well as on the federal level, at least going through the process of trying to get approved. What that means is this is a massive deal, right? Like it's a massive thing. Whatever you think of it, it's at least a significant cultural reality. And from a personal side, say it's really good to study, not just because it's a cultural thing, but also because it helps you actually drill down into questions that you just take for granted answers to, like what is money?
Mm-hmm.
Like what is my money based on? Why does it work when I bring cash somewhere and I hand it to somebody? Why does this work as a way to exchange? There are questions about these things that you probably just haven't thought about, or at least many of us haven't thought about, at least not on any deep level. And when you get into something like Bitcoin, it begins to force you to actually think about it.
Yeah, I agree. Again, if it is everything you don't understand about money and computers, if these are the kinds of changes that are happening, you are going to wake up someday and these are going to have been the old days. So it's good to learn about money and computers. just to be clear, that's my my argument. So Pastor Michael, while I know some things about Bitcoin, I can tell you I have not looked much into the books about it. Let me give people a recommendation for a pretty short one. Like if you're like, I don't want to like, dude, I am not diving in deep about this. I'll give one, then I'll tell you the one that I think I'm going to read. So there is The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. It's about the audiobook. It's like 2 hours long. So that means it's written.
Remind me of the guy's name too. He's great.
What is Vijay Boyapati. That's me. That's me.
I set you up for that one.
Yeah, you really did.
No, really great. Somebody really interesting to follow and learn more from. I actually haven't read that. That's been on my list, so maybe that's the one I'll read.
And then the one I'm interested in is a book called The Big Print. And so it's
Lawrence
a book.
Leopard, right?
Yeah, and so it is a book. Basically, the author's thesis is that we are on a economic change in the United States, perhaps globally. I'll have to read it and find out about where we're about to go through something economically as significant as the Big Short, right, in the housing market, but that it is going to be related to inflation and money printing. And so he obviously believes that leads to a really pro-Bitcoin idea for people. And we'll see what I think of it. But it sounds like, again, a very interesting, to me, just a very interesting thing to learn about. So
yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things you could read. My go-to recommendation is always the Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean. There's I'm thinking maybe I'll read The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. There's book that I listened to a long time ago. I don't know where or how. I'm pretty sure I listened to it free somewhere, but maybe I'll actually have to get the book. But there's a book called 21 Lessons, What I've Learned from Falling Down the Bitcoin Rabbit Hole by Bitcoiner named Durgigi, I think is his name. But I remember listening to it and finding it very provocative, very interesting, like things that I don't necessarily all agree with even, but found it really fascinating, right? He has chapters, titled things like Bitcoin is time, and just like trying to connect some different philosophical ideas to how we understand this. And so anyway, I might read that again is what I was thinking.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
There's also a great book also called Layered Money that is also a helpful introduction in some ways to not just Bitcoin, but understanding why many people think Bitcoin is a good thing given our current economic model. If
you decide you want to believe Bitcoin is a scam, please do some of this reading first so that when you tell me it's a scam, that you actually describe what actually exists. The good vibes are here. Laura heads, we love you. Bitcoiners, it's, number goes up, baby. You guys are doing great. I think this is going to be a great summer.
It's all good vibes. It's good vibes for everybody. Whether you want to read a children's book or you want to read about Bitcoin and magic internet money, it's good vibes.
So that you can do interesting mashups. Like, what if Pa? Would he have used Bitcoin? What would he have been doing?
I guarantee Pa was a Bitcoiner. I guarantee that Pa was a Bitcoiner.
Rate and review this show. Check us out on Patreon if you would like to hear me black pill about public libraries for a while.